Hello, this is Bret Hayworth with the Sioux City Journal. Thank you for going online to see this video here. This is one of 5 videos that we're doing with 5 congressional candidates, 5 Republican congressional candidates for the Iowa 4th Congressional District, for which there is a June 2nd primary. We're closing in very close on the voting here. And with me today is Steve Reeder, who's one of the 5 candidates. Steve is a businessman from Arnold's Park. Thank you for being here, Steve.
Thanks, Brett.
The spread of coronavirus has really impacted Iowa and in all the ways that we live with our restaurants and businesses and everything. But it also has impacted the campaign, and there has been a halt to in-person campaigning. However, Governor Reynolds has recently lifted some of the restrictions. And would you see in these last few days, would you see in-person campaigning resuming? Do you foresee that at all?
Oh, I could see it resuming, Brett. The way we handled it was when we first started the campaign, Brenda and I, we wanted to get out in front of the voters and win this thing by getting in front of them and getting our message to them personally. And we put a lot of miles on the truck, and we got in front of people early on. And then when the COVID hit, we thought, oh my gosh, but actually, I feel it's been worked well, at least the way we've run our campaign, because rather than jumping in the truck and have to drive 2.5 hours for a meeting that might have had 5 to 15 people, since I'm in the real estate business, and I love talking on the phone, I love communicating with people, I was just able to reach out. I was on the phone all day. And then these Zoom conference calls, we immediately reached out to all these different groups, whether it be a Republican Central Committee, and said, hey, we've got Zoom capability. And we reached out to the Trump Victory Group, and we've connected with them. And so I've had anywhere from 1 to 2 Zoom conference calls every day or every other day, meeting with anywhere from 5 to 30 people, and getting our message out there, even if we were just participating out from a listening standpoint, we're participating and hearing what's going on out there with all the Iowans and through the whole COVID thing. So the one thing that we didn't do was Brenda and I made the decision that we weren't going to have our hand out fundraising during COVID. So that has caused us to have to dip into our pocket a little more, because although this is a very grassroots deal, I'm not interested in any PACs or anything, but we've had to make sure we get our message out just with postcards and some limited direct mail. So that's what we've done to make sure we get through.
So overall, you don't feel like it's impinged your ability to reach people?
I do not. I think we've done a good job of continuing to get our message out there, yes. But yes.
Okay, and for those who aren't familiar with your background, Steve, just kind of take us through your professional life and what you've done and how you feel like that fits to make you a good congressman.
Okay, so I graduated from the University of Nebraska. I got in the real estate business. Most of my business, when I got into brokerage, was in Omaha, Council Bluffs, but I've ventured out from there. I've done work all through Northwest Iowa and a couple other states, and I've learned through the brokerage business is I've always been like an independent contractor. I've never worked for any government agency, or if I worked for a company like NP Dodge Commercial or CBRE, I was an independent contractor. So in order for me to put food on the table for my family, I had to sell something. I had to negotiate. And so I've learned to work with all types of businesses, large and small, and be a listener and be a communicator and be a negotiator. And those are things that I've done throughout my 35 years. And I've really learned to really listen to people of all types of interests, whether they be conservative or maybe a little bit on the liberal or more of a libertarian. And in order for me to complete a sale, my father always taught me it had to be a win-win. You had to make sure that both sides gave a little bit. And those are things that I feel like we've gotten away from, Brett, in our federal government. It just seems like there's always this pitting one side against the other, the D and the R, and without bringing them together, and I feel like that's something that I can really bring to the table, is aligning myself, and I've done this, I've aligned myself with these other patriots across the country that really don't have a lot of political experience, but more I like the guys that have had military experience and have just business experience. And I would love to see this 117th Congressional District come together with a bunch of new guys that think outside the box and are able to communicate with people of all thoughts and religions and races and everything, just to bring us together rather than this divisiveness that we've seen.
So for anyone who's on the campaign trail who asks you, and I believe this is your first time for running for elective office, if they say, I'd maybe like a little more experience someone who's gone through a legislative process or what
Right.
have you. How do you explain yourself with that?
Well, I see that as an advantage because what I've seen is and this one reason that brought me into this race is I've seen money and lobbyists and special interest groups influence the way we legislate, and our government has grown so big, and I feel that the people, not all of them, a lot of people that are in there have been swayed by these big lobbyists and influenced by these big groups, and I feel that if you put service before self, and you go to serve, just like our founding fathers wanted. That's what I think the people of Iowa are looking for. Congressman King, I think he's been a good guy that's represented Iowa. I don't think he's fallen victim to a lot of these big PACs and these special interest groups. But I feel that I have learned to, in order to work in all these different real estate markets, the ups and downs in the different states I've worked in, that you have to think outside the box. You got to be creative, and you got to be able to be a good listener to hear, what other side might be saying, and then try to incorporate that. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What would you say, and maybe keep it 2 to 3,
Okay.
3 max, what would be the prime issues that are most of concern to you as we sit here in the middle of 2020?
Okay. Okay, this is what I feel is important. I have seen with our government growing, I'm a huge advocate for kids and education and the family unit. And what I've seen happen over the years, and I'm a fan of American history, okay? And our country was built upon God and our U.S. Constitution. And I've seen over the years, I think there was like a Supreme Court decision back in '47 and another one in the early '60s that started to take God out of the education and out of our public places. And what I've seen is a breakdown of the family unit by those decisions. And I feel that when our government comes in and thinks, oh, well, we can replace an income earner or a father in a family by taking care of people, it's broken up the family. And I feel like our education has gotten watered down to the point where we have the federal government involved with the Department of Education now wanting to try and say, well, this is the way to educate. And I think that decision belongs with the parents and the teachers and the superintendents and the school boards. And so I want to get the federal government out of that. And I just want to do my best to get the federal government. I want to limit the size of our federal government. That's why my mantra all along, Bret, has been limited government, more faith, and more freedom. I want to get to downsize our federal government. It's gotten too big, and I feel like the family unit, through with those cases I mentioned, taking God out, through social media, I feel like it's broken down our family unit. And so that, to me, that's the basis of having a strong union is education and keeping the family unit intact.
You want to mention one more? That's whether healthcare
Oh,
or
okay.
immigration.
Well, yeah.
Maybe one more issue.
One more issue, our budget. I mean, our federal government, in order to keep our economy growing, we can't be spending more money than we take in. And I want to empower, rather than empower these big federal agencies, I want to empower the individual, these small family farmers and these businesses on the main street of Iowa. I want to make sure that they have a level playing field. And whenever our government gets involved with these big subsidy programs and these special programs, it's always unevenly distributed. And I want to get the federal government out of our lives.
So this is not, I don't believe it necessarily fits the definition of a subsidy, but what has happened was with the coronavirus, there was a $2.2 trillion
right.
package. I believe it was added right under the deficit or
right.
federal debt. How do you feel about that? There's no revenue source to pay for that. Was it so needed that that was the best way to do it, or should it have been done a different way?
Well, it's easy to look back and say we should have done this or we should have done that. I felt that it was up to our federal government, if they're going to start shutting down our economy, that they had to put some monies out there. But it's an example of how unfairly it was distributed. You hear about these PPP programs that were big companies or big nonprofits or universities that were taking advantage of it, and it's maybe some small business that maybe didn't have the right accountant or the right attorney to even know how to apply for a loan. they're left with nothing. And some of these big companies that have the wherewithal to apply for the monies. And so you got this $2.5 trillion that's unevenly distributed. And so, you know, it's hard. Looking back, should we have shut down our economy? No, I don't think so. But President Trump was listening to who he thought were experts. I think this Fauci is a fraud. I think listening to the WHO and this, you know, our CDC folks that, because I was immediately talking to some doctors that I know, and I've set up this advisory board across the state with some of the finest in medical and business and finance and agriculture. And the medical guys were telling me that, you know, yes, the coronavirus is contagious, but it's just affecting the people with compromised immune systems and the people that are in nursing homes. We don't need to shut down the whole economy. So, yeah, so I think that, you know, the 2.5 trillion was just like, you know, it was well intended, but then it wasn't fairly distributed.
Okay. I have a couple horse race type questions,
Okay.
I guess you would call them.
Yes.
Do you, and there's no outside polling from an independent polling company that I've seen. Do you think this is a two-person race between Congressman King and Feenstra, or how do you feel like you fit?
Okay, I do not think it's a two-person. I know you see some polls, and I don't think you can trust those polls, because the one that just came out was by a group that has backed the Feenstra campaign. And they're saying that, you know, that King and Feenstra are neck and neck, you know, in the 40 percentile, and Richards, Reeder, and Taylor are, you know, less single digits. I have a hard time believing that, Bret. We've been out there on the trail visiting with people, that those that want to see change, those are tired of seeing the big money in politics. And, you know, I just feel that people are looking for grassroots. The people that really dig deep and look at the candidates are looking for, you know, business minds that maybe aren't looking for a career or looking to, that have a lot of political experience, that looking for people that just are patriots. And I consider myself a patriot that just wants to go serve Iowa and serve our country. And money has, I've found since I've been in this, has really influenced how polling goes and how advertising goes. If a candidate has a lot of money and they can advertise 2 or 3 times, you know, on certain stations every night, obviously, you know, that I hope voters really dig deep at the character and who's got honesty and integrity and their backgrounds.
Okay. Do you have any, typically don't ask a lot of questions about a particular candidate, but since the congressman is a 9-term congressman, I want to ask you directly about him. What would be a reason that you would not see that he should continue as congressman?
I think Steve King has his values, you know, his stance on pro-life and stance on Second Amendment are outstanding. I think the people of Iowa relate to that. For me personally, my business experience and being creative and negotiator and really, I think those are things that I would like to have voters see about me, that my goal is to serve Iowa. I feel like too many politicians go to Washington and get entrenched there, and that they're not representing the people of Iowa. That's my sole goal, is to be a patriot, serve a couple terms. I believe in term limits. I think if you spend more than 2 terms as a U.S. House, if you spend more than 2 terms for 4 years, I think that's too long.
So what makes you believe that you could win, and what is your strategy to not just take away votes from the top, but to actually win?
Well, I think that our message has resonated with the voters. You know, we have to, as you know, we have to get 35%. One of us has to get 35%. I suspect that with 5 people in the race that it could go to convention, and I'm prepared for that. And I think that it's going to be a lot closer than the polls or people think. I think that our message has resonated. The fact that I've, you know, aligned myself with a lot of these other patriots across the country that want to go serve and don't have political experience may be to my advantage.
Yep. And then, as I want to ask the final question, and again, thank you for your time, Mr. Reeder. Mm-hmm. As we sit here, there are lots in all counties, and Woodbury County is certainly among them. There's all kinds of mailed-in ballots that are pouring into
Right.
the county treasurers. President Trump has spoken against mail-in voting. Our Secretary of State, Paul Pate, has advanced the concept and wants as many to vote in person as. Do you have any problems with early voting in mail-in form?
I don't, as long as each state or whoever's doing our secretary, I think Paul Pate does a good job. As long as we have some type of verification process, because we just saw in the national media where they're finding votes from South Carolina, ballots up in Maryland, and we're finding one individual I just saw that received 7 ballots at their address, and 5 of them were for people that had previously lived there. And so those ballots could be used illegally. So as long as the process is done where there's, and I'm all for electronic voting ID or some type of voting ID, as long as that's done, I have no problem. But I don't want this broad brush of we can do mail-in balloting, and then have it. And we've seen it, the fraud. You look at California. You can go get a driver's license and walk next door and without even being a legal citizen and get a voter card. So that's wrong. I think Iowa's doing it right, and we have to be very strict if we're going to do mail-in balloting. It's got to be very well monitored, and there's got to be set rules in place. And I think our president is trying to enforce that.
And you've seen nothing within Iowa to make you
No, I think Paul Pate's doing a good job. I've heard and seen nothing in Iowa, but you see in some of these more liberal states where they want to take away from the way that the voting has been done historically. I think we got to be careful there.
Okay. Well, thank you for answering all those questions, and thank you for helping the journal viewers and journal readers understand a little bit more about the 4th District race. And thank you very, very much for your time.
Bret, I appreciate your time today. Okay.